Rain battered the windows in relentless sheets, a steady percussion against the hospital room's glass. Inside, the air buzzed faintly with the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant shuffle of nurses' shoes in the hallway. Alina Woods lay still on the bed, wrapped in pristine white sheets that smelled faintly of antiseptic. Her face was pale beneath the bruising that curled along her cheekbone like smoke. Monitors beeped in quiet, artificial rhythm, as if trying to simulate a calm that did not exist. Dr. Liu stood at the foot of the bed, clipboard in hand, her brow furrowed with clinical gravity. The trauma to the occipital lobe was significant. "It's likely temporary," she said gently, glancing between the woman on the bed and the man beside her. "But for now, she's blind." Marcus Woods, Elena's husband, nodded slowly. He didn't flinch. His fingers rested on her hand, but the grip lacked the warmth of urgency, the desperation of love. It was more a gesture performed than felt. "We'll get through this," he murmured, his voice smooth, practiced. One step at a time, Elena's eyes opened. Their surface was glassy, unfocused, staring into a void that on the outside seemed to swallow light. She blinked once, deliberately, then tilted her face toward the sound of Marcus's voice. I can't see," she said, hoarse and fragile. Her lips trembled, but not from fear. Not even from shock, from effort. Because she could see, not well but enough, she could see the vague silhouette of Marcus reaching beneath the edge of the hospital bed. She could make out the subtle flicker of his phone screen lighting up against his palm. His thumb moved quickly, confidently. He wasn't Googling treatments. He was texting, already. Beneath the words of comfort, he whispered, his loyalty was elsewhere. Alina didn't move. She didn't betray anything in her face. Not her suspicion. Not her plan. Only the blank expression of a woman newly cast into darkness. His hand tightened, fractionally, as he finished typing. "Don't worry," he said, leaning in, lips brushing. Close to her ear, "I'll take care of everything." She nodded, keeping her breathing slow and even. Everything her mind raced behind the facade of blindness. She had built a global tech empire from nothing, navigated corporate coups, investor betrayals, smear campaigns. But this, what had happened to her, wasn't a boardroom ambush. This was personal. The crash that almost killed her had too many unanswered questions. Too many people with too much to gain. And Marcus, her husband, her supposed protector, was already lying. So she lied first. Her voice, in a steady internal whisper, drifted through the sterile quiet of the room. I had everything, except the truth. And this was the only way to find it. As the rain continued to fall and the machines ticked beside her like a countdown. Alina stared into the dark and began to listen. Alina Woods had never been handed anything. Born in the dense, chaotic sprawl of Ajaguno, Legasa, place where ambition often got swallowed by survival, she learned early how to fight without fists. She outpaced the boys in school, hacked together second-hand computers, and taught herself coding by flashlight when the power failed. Her mind became her currency, her resilience a second skin. By the time she was 26, she had a scholarship to Georgia Tech. By 30, she'd launched VaultLink, a fintech startup that disrupted secure mobile transactions across Africa and the US, drawing millions in venture capital. Now, at 38, Alina stood at the helm of a booming empire. Hailed as one of Atlanta's most influential tech leaders, her face graced magazine covers, her opinions moved markets, and through it all, she had Marcus. Marcus Woods had swept her off her feet with the easy charm of a man who knew exactly when to smile and when to say nothing. He was an architect with a passion for minimalist design, a man who quoted Frank Lloyd Wright and made her laugh when she couldn't breathe from stress. In the beginning, he was her calm, her home, but somewhere along the way, the balance shifted. When Elena's company began to rise, Marcus offered to support her full-time, saying he believed in her vision, that he didn't want to be a distraction. He framed it as sacrifice, as love. But over time, that love soured in subtle ways. At first, it was the small things, him missing her press conferences, skipping the company gala because he was just too tired. Then it became larger things, the dismissive tone when she spoke. About her work, the long silences at dinner, the flickers of resentment behind his smile. Marcus didn't say he resented her success. He didn't need to. He wore it like cologne strong enough to sting. Elena tried to bridge the gap. She invited him to events, encouraged his hobbies, suggested he take on design projects again. But each offer was met with vague deflection. And then came the bank statement. It was meant to be a routine auditor monthly financial check on her household expenses, something she handled personally out of habit. A single transaction stood out. A transfer of $4,800 to someone named *Laurie. Cantrell *. The name meant nothing, but the timing did. It had been the night of her keynote in San Francisco. The night Marcus claimed to be home with a migraine. Elena didn't confront him. Not yet. She wasn't sure what hurt more, the transaction or the quiet realization that she no longer knew who he was, or if he had ever really belonged to her at all. But one thing was certain. She couldn't ask him directly. If he'd grown distant out of resentment or guilt, he would only lie. She needed to see him unguarded, vulnerable. And that meant giving him a stage where he thought she couldn't see it all, so she devised the plan. With the help of Demilala, her longtime driver, and a trusted private physician, she staged the accident on a remote stretch of road. The injuries were real enough to sell it glass cuts, bruised ribs, mild concussion, but the blindness, fabricated. Her doctor, loyal and well-paid, diagnosed trauma-induced cortical blindness, a rare but plausible condition. Temporary, the doctor said, but uncertain. Elena leaned into it fully. She wore the blank stare, asked for assistance to walk, never reacted when Marcus slipped into a room. She played the part with quiet precision, like one of the many roles she had perfected. Over the years, except this time, the stakes were personal. She hadn't anticipated how hard it would be. To lie in her own home, helpless by design. To hear Marcus's footsteps pause outside the bedroom door, and then retreat. To sense when he checked his phone more than he checked on her. He brought her tea. He kissed her forehead. But it all felt mechanical, measured, like a man reciting lines. And then there was Laurie. The name popped up again, this time whispered over the phone late at night, when Marcus thought Elena was asleep. Every moment since the accident was a test. Would he touch her hand just to comfort her, or only when someone else was watching? Would he sit beside her in silence, or fill the space with practiced empathy? Was there still love left in him, or only guilt dressed up as care? Elena knew the danger of what she was doing. This wasn't just a test of love, it was a dismantling of trust, a dissection of something that had once been sacred. If she was wrong, she might break a good man. But if she was right, if he had betrayed her, if she had become nothing more than a meal ticket in his quiet resentment, then she needed to know before he took more than her heart. In the stillness of her self-imposed darkness, Alina waited not for her vision to return, but for the truth to reveal itself. The first 3 days of Alina's blindness passed like a dream stretched too tightly. Everything was too loud, too present. The silence between Marcus's footsteps, the subtle clink of ice in his glass as he drank late into the night, the sound of his voice too smooth, too cheerful, cut through the stillness like static. He hovered just enough to appear attentive, but there was a hollowness to it all. On the first night, he brought her chamomile tea and kissed her forehead. She heard him sigh with exaggerated tenderness, as though auditioning for grief. But by midnight, she felt the buzz of his phone vibrate against the mattress. He slipped out of bed with the grace of someone practiced at sneaking away. Down the hall, muffled through closed doors, she caught the low, intimate murmur of his voice. No one laughs like that on a business call. By day 2, he'd forgotten her medication. Not just once, but twice. She never reminded him. She needed to see. If he'd notice, he didn't. She waited until he left to carefully count the pills and swallow the right dosage herself. He played the doting husband when the nurse stopped by, joked about installing guardrails in the bathroom, made a point to hold her hand when others were around. But once alone, his presence dimmed. He'd pass her in the hallway without a word, speak in hushed tones just a few feet away, whispering into his phone like a teenager sneaking calls past curfew. And she just sat there, staring into the void, her heart drawing conclusions. Her mind wasn't ready to accept. On the third night, Alina pretended to fall asleep early. She kept her breathing slow, steady, trained to the rhythm of someone deeply unconscious. Marcus slid out of bed again, not even trying to be quiet. She heard him unlock his phone and speak low into it. "Yeah, no, she's fine, just resting. Can't see a thing. It's almost too easy." There was a pause, a soft chuckle. "You should come by, soon." Then silence. And Alina, eyes closed, felt the sharp crack of those words lodge themselves into her ribs like splinters. Day 4 changed everything. Alina sat in the living room, feigning disorientation, listening for Marcus's footsteps. But instead of his usual slow gait, she heard something else, the click-click of heels. Not heavy or deliberate, but soft, purposeful, feminine. There was laughter too, light and restrained. Then perfume of floral haze that did not belong to Alina. Jasmine and something sweeter, younger. It ghosted past her as the heels moved through the hall. Alina kept her head tilted, her eyes blank. She listened as Marcus whispered in a tone reserved for flirtation, not familiarity. There was no attempt to hide it, no announcement of a visitor. Whoever the woman was, she'd been here before, or Marcus didn't care if she came now. Either way, Elena's stomach curled. That evening, when she asked Marcus if anyone had come by, he replied, "Just the delivery guy. You must have imagined something." The lie was clean, easy. Practiced. Then came day 5. Alina had a virtual board call with investors, scheduled for 10 a.m. a crucial meeting, one she'd trusted Marcus to set up and help moderate given her condition. At 10:02, she sat alone in the sunroom, waiting in silence as her laptop screen remained dark. No call, no setup, no Marcus. She waited, seething, until she heard him laugh from the kitchen on yet another call. She crept closer, careful not to betray her. Agility. She couldn't see clearly, but she could hear everything. A woman's voice giggled softly through the speakerphone. Doesn't she suspect anything? Then Marcus, smooth as ever, replied, "She'll never know. She can't even see what's right in front of her." Alina froze. Her breath caught in her throat. "She's so focused on the business." "Always was," he continued. "Honestly, she made it easy for me. The betrayal was casual, like discussing a lost item, not a marriage." Alina reached into the robe pocket where she had hidden her voice recorder and pressed the button. The device caught every word as she stood there, unseen though not blind. Her heart didn't shatter, it cracked slowly, like ice under pressure. This was the confirmation she had feared. Marcus wasn't just drifting, he was gone. Gone into someone else's arms. Someone who wore perfume and walked through Elena's house like it might someday be her own. And worse, he believed Alina would never catch him. That her love had made her too blind to see what he had become. But she had seen enough. And now she had proof. Each morning after Marcus left, Alina let the mask slip. She waited until the front door clicked shut, until the sound of his car faded into the hum of Atlanta traffic, before releasing the grief that clenched her ribs like iron. Her sobs were silent, but full grief curling through her chest in waves as she sat alone, sightless to him but wide awake to everything else. She thought often of the man who once kissed her on the Lagos train platform when she had only 2,000 in her purse and dreams too big for their small apartment. He had held her face then like it was the most precious thing he'd ever touched. Now he barely looked at her unless someone else was in the room. And when he did, there was calculation, not care, in his eyes. At night, Alina played the recordings, one after another. She listened to her husband whispering to Lori, casual, intimate, emboldened. Asterisk, are we really doing this? What if she gets better? Lori's voice quivered between thrill and dread. Marcus's answer was flat. Asterisk, she won't. And even if she does, it's my money too. Asterisk, Alina flinched at the sound of his voice, so sure, so entitled. Each word stripped away another layer of the man she had once chosen. He wasn't just drifting. He was planning, rehearsing life without her, with someone else, using the empire she had built, brick by digital brick. Late one afternoon, she remembered her mother's words, spoken with a bitter kind of wisdom. Some men, her mother had warned years ago, only love power when they own it, not when you do. Back then, Alina had dismissed the warning. She believed in love that could hold its own against ambition. She believed Marcus was different. But now those words returned like prophesied into her bones, undeniable. Her power had become the thing he resented most, and he was trying to take it back, piece by piece. Meanwhile, outside her crumbling marriage, the world continued. Her assistant, Rhys, ever loyal and sharp-eyed, began to notice things. Marcus would arrive late to meetings, vague about his whereabouts. He missed a strategy session and claimed he was visiting his father. But Rhys spotted him at a Buckhead hotel instead, lingering at the bar with a tall woman in a red dress. She didn't make a scene, but the image lodged itself in her mind. A day later, Rhys confronted Alina, heart pounding. "Are you sure? You're safe?" she asked, her voice careful, probing. "Is there anything you need to tell me?" Alina, seated in her chair by the window, turned slowly toward the voice. She blinked, kept her expression vacant. "No," she said softly. "I'm okay, Rhys. I just need rest." Even with Rhys, she had to keep up the act. The risk of exposure was too great. If anyone else knew, she could see the entire plan would unravel. She had to remain blind, even to her closest ally. But Marcus wasn't just lying, he was escalating. Bolder now, confident, he began inserting himself into company business. At first, it was subtle, forwarding emails to her investors, scheduling meetings on her behalf, telling Reese that he'd be stepping in more often until Elena's health improved. He accessed her office safe under the pretense of locating insurance documents. He spoke to her tech leads with undue authority. Then, she discovered the wire $50,000, funneled from their shared account to a private consultancy in Laurie's name. Not disguised, not hidden. He didn't think he needed to. Elena's resolve hardened. She shifted from survival to strategy. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about control, about reclaiming it before everything she built was eroded by someone who had long stopped believing in her. Quietly, she enlisted her tech team under the guise of delegated oversight. She had them trace every call, every transaction, every data point Marcus touched. She encrypted her own devices, set up real-time backups. Her team, unaware of the deeper context, assumed they were assisting her in transition planning. In truth, they were helping her build a dossier digital noose. Every day was a war of masks. Elena smiled at Marcus when he brought her tea, nodded sweetly as he recited her calendar. She tilted her face toward the sound of his voice like a woman still adrift in darkness, even as she watched him from the corners of her eyes. He still believed she was helpless, that she had no idea what he was doing, that he was winning, and that belief, she knew, would be his undoing. Because while he plotted to take everything from her, she was gathering the truth. Every whispered phone call, every forged signature, every message to Laurie about their future. Her heart ached aching in that slow, cruel way only love turned sour could inflict, but she didn't flinch anymore. The man she loved was gone. A stranger wore his face now, and Elena Woods, blinded by design, was preparing to strike with open eyes. The night of the confrontation unfolded under warm lighting and a carefully prepared silence. Elena sat at the dinner table, her hands folded neatly in her lap, head tilted slightly in practiced blindness. Marcus sat across from her, dressed sharply as always, swirling his wine with the confidence of a man who believed he had already won. She spoke softly, the words heavy with a false vulnerability she'd perfected over the last week. "I've been thinking," she said, pausing as if uncertain, "about what happens next, about you." Marcus leaned forward, curious. She continued, her voice tremoring just enough. "You've taken care of me through everything. I know I haven't been easy, and I don't want to be a burden anymore. So, I've decided I want to leave it all to you. The company, the house, everything. I trust you." Marcus blinked, stunned for only a moment before a warm, practiced smile spread across his face. He reached across the table, taking her hand gently. "I love you," he said, lips brushing her knuckles. "You're everything to me." She nodded, eyes unseeing, though her chest burned with disgust. That night, long after she excused herself, Elena stumbled into the living room, her fingers trailing the edge of the furniture as if still lost in darkness. But when she opened her eyes, she saw colors, light, sharp edges. Her vision had returned. It was overwhelming, the world so vibrant a gander. The first thing she saw was Marcus, standing by the bar, grinning into his phone. "It's done," he whispered. "She's giving me everything." A moment later, Laurie stepped through the front door. They kissed quickly, carelessly, like a ritual long rehearsed. Elena watched from behind the corner, breath steady, rage coiled tight in her spine. They drank her wine, they laughed, they toasted to freedom, and then they disappeared into the guest room. Alina didn't move. She just stood there in the hallway, staring at the closed door, listening to the soft groans of betrayal bleed through her walls. It wasn't shock she felt anymore, it was clarity. The next morning, Alina dressed in silence. No robe, no slippers. She chose a navy blue power suit and heels that clicked with purpose. Her hair was tied back, sleek and deliberate. She walked into the boardroom without her cane, her steps sharp, her head held high. The conversation at the table froze mid-sentence. Gasps echoed across the room. Marcus, seated confidently at the head of the table. Her chair turned and went pale. Alina. Someone whispered. She met his eyes. I believe that's my seat, she said evenly. He stood, stammering. I thought you, she held up a hand and calmly handed him a thick manila folder. Inside, screenshots of bank transfers to Laurie's account, transcripts of their calls, audio recordings, surveillance stills, proof of every deception. Marcus's hands trembled as he flipped through the contents. What is this? He croaked. You were never taking care of me, Alina said, her voice clear and cutting. I was taking notes. You weren't being tested. I was. She took a step closer, her gaze unwavering. And you failed. He opened his mouth to speak just as the door creaked open behind him and Laurie entered, her smile vanishing when she saw Alina standing tall in the middle of the room, eyes sharp and blazing. She froze mid-step, then reached instinctively for Marcus's hand. Alina almost pitied the desperation. Security will walk you both out, she said calmly. I've already filed the papers. Divorce, embezzlement, civil charges. You'll be hearing from my lawyers, assuming you don't hear from the DA first. The silence in the boardroom was thick and stunned. No one moved. I suggest you don't make a scene, Alina added coldly. You've had your time pretending to be in charge. That's over. Security arrived without words. Marcus tried to argue, sputtering apologies, denials, pleadings, but Alina never flinched. She watched them walk out, hand in hand to people who thought they were clever enough to take her down from the inside. They never realized she'd been watching all along. When the door closed behind them, Alina turned to her board, her voice steady. Let's begin, she said. We've got work to do. And just like that, Alina Woods reclaimed everything: her name, her company, her power, not as a victim, but as a woman who refused to stay blind to the truth. The fallout came swiftly. Marcus, humiliated and desperate, filed a lawsuit claiming half of Elena's company and assets, citing spousal contribution and emotional distress. But Elena was prepared. During her blindness, she'd quietly restructured her company, shifting key shares into a trust, revising her will and tightening every legal loophole Marcus might try to crawl through. The paper trail was clean, tight, and impenetrable. The courts saw the truth for what it was: an attempted manipulation, not a partnership. Marcus walked away with nothing but his name, and even that now carried the stench of scandal. Laurie disappeared into silence, and Alina never looked back. With the war behind her, Alina didn't return to her penthouse or the curated life she once curated for two. She chose something quieter, smaller, a modest apartment in the cities. West End, close to where she'd started, far from the illusions of power that had nearly cost her everything. She pared down her days, trading opulent boardroom chaos for clarity. There were no more lavish parties, no more charity galas, no more pretending, just work that mattered, and people who saw her not as a symbol, but as a story. She began mentoring. Young women first, just a few, then dozens, guiding them through the same glass and fire she had once clawed her way through. Her wounds became warnings, her scars a kind of map. She spoke with softness and steel, not about revenge, but about readiness. She wasn't bitter. She was simply done living with closed eyes. One afternoon, while sorting through an old box of journals from her college years, Alina found a letter folded between pages of notes and ambition. It was from her mother, written long ago, in a time before success, before Marcus, before heartbreak. The handwriting was a little faded, but the words were as sharp as memory. Asterisk, one day, your eyes will see things your heart cannot. That day, trust the truth, not the fear. Asterisk, Alina read it twice, then a third time. She closed her eyes and let the weight of the words settle inside her, because she had seen it now. The difference between love and control, between loyalty and convenience. She had stared into the face of betrayal and chosen not to flinch, not to shrink. And more than that, she had chosen herself. Not the image others wanted, but the woman she had fought to become. Alina Woods was not blind, not anymore. And in the space where pain had lived, she planted something else: truth, strength, and a future not built on anyone else's back but standing proudly on her own. The late afternoon sun spilled gently through the tall windows of the community center classroom, casting long golden streaks across the whiteboard and the eager faces of the girls gathered inside. Alina sat quietly in the back, a notebook balanced on her knee, watching as a 15-year-old with braids and bold eyes pitched an app designed to help teenagers manage their mental health. The others clapped, peppered her with questions, their voices bursting with excitement and possibility. Alina smiled, her gaze soft, her heart full in a way that had nothing to do with money or power. Reese slid into the seat beside her, holding a paper cup of tea. After a pause, she asked, not unkindly, "Do you ever miss him?" Alina didn't look away from the front of the room. She thought of Marcus, not the man he became, but the man she once believed in, the one who kissed her in the rain, who cheered when she landed her first investor, who said he'd build a home around her dreams. A ghost, really. "I miss who I thought he was," she said finally, "but not who he turned out to be." A burst of laughter rang out as another girl pitched a biodegradable phone case. The energy in the room swelled with belief, with courage. Alina's smile widened. This was real. This was worth seeing. As the girls circled around the whiteboard to vote on the final pitch, Alina's voice echoed in quiet voiceover. Asterisk, blindness isn't in the eyes. It's in the trust we give to people who never earned it. But when you finally see clearly, there's no going back. Asterisk, the camera lingered on her face, calm, wise, radiant not in triumph but in truth, then slowly faded to black, leaving only the sound of laughter, of young girls dreaming, and a woman who had finally learned to see.